The legislature is now in session. Mr. Clerk for items.
Mr. President, the next item on the agenda, Legislative Bill 565, introduced by Senator Bostelman. It's bill for an act relating to hydrogen hubs, amend section 66-2301. States legislative findings, states intent regarding appropriations, provides for a grant program as prescribed, provides duties and powers for the Department of Economic Development, harmonized provisions, repeals the original section, declares an emergency. Bill was read for the first time on January 17th of this year and referred to the Natural Resources Committee. When the legislature left the bill, Mr. President, pending were there was a division of the committee amendments as well as a bracket motion pending. The first division pending to the committee amendments, Mr. President, comprised Legislative Bill 723.
Senator Bostelman, you're recognized for a refresh on LB 565 and the first division of the committee amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. LB 565 was a committee priority bill. AM 827 was a committee amendment that went to it. Both come out of committee 8-0. AM 1240 is where we're at right now, which is LB 723. LB 723 provides contract services to the Department of Natural Resources, similar to what the Department of Transportation, Game and Parks, and political subdivisions currently have. The bill establishes a procurement process for several alternative delivery methods: design build, progressive design build, construction manager, general contractor, and public-private partnerships. The opportunity for this is to provide DNR the ability on very large projects to use advanced contracting to get the work done on a quicker scale, if you will, and less cost effective. With that, I would ask for your green vote on AM 1240.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Hunt is not here, so we'll turn to the speaking queue, and Senator John Kavanaugh, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I appreciate Senator Bosselman's refresh on that, and I just thought I'd refresh on it as well. So we've divided out this bill for everybody who's kind of just tuning in. So this section is just the design build portion for the Department of Natural Resources, which specifically, it's not that the bill is not specific to the canal, but this is the foreseen use is to build the Perkins County Canal out in western Nebraska on the border between Nebraska and Colorado for under the South Platte Compact. And so I've said all along, I just wanted to be clear about my position that I supported this section of the bill being placed into the overall bill and continue to support it, but that doesn't mean that I'm necessarily endorsing at this point the idea of building the canal and other parts. I know there's a lot of interest in that, and we've had a lot of conversations about it last year in the authorizing language that we passed last year, and there more than likely will be a appropriation about the canal later this year. And, so I guess I just haven't made up my mind about whether I would be supporting that specific appropriation of funds, which could be up to, $600 million, I think is the latest we'd heard. But if we do it, if we are going to build this canal, the reason that we want to have this process in place is that it will allow us to build that canal as efficiently as we can. And like I said, $600 million is the current price. When the canal was first announced last January by Governor Ricketts at the time, the price tag was $500 million. And so we've seen the price tag go up $100 million in the course of a year of just talking about the canal and not actually doing any of the building work yet. And so the reason you'd want to give the Department of Natural Resources this sort of authorization is that price is just going to keep going up. We may appropriate the money this year, and by the time they get everything done that they need to get done, the designing, the purchasing of land, and the starting construction, that price could very well be $750 million, or when we get it finally built, it'll come in at $1 billion. And that may happen regardless of what we do here. But the interest should be that if we're going to build this canal and potential reservoirs, that we should do it as cost effectively as possible. So that was my justification for supporting this particular portion of the overall package and the underlying bill when it did come before the committee. So I would, again, join Senator Bosselman, Chairman Bosselman, in asking for your green light on AM 1240, and can talk about the rest of the bill at another time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, colleagues. I'm sorry, would Senator John Kavanaugh yield to a question?
Senator John Kavanaugh, will you yield to a question?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for yielding without me even knowing that I was going to ask you to. So, because you were talking about the canal. So this amendment is about the canal?
In a way, it's not specifically about the canal. This would allow the Department of Natural Resources to have a method of basically procurement, design, build for projects. And the type of project would include the canal, but it's not exclusive to just the canal.
Okay. And I'm sorry, just because I have you right now, whose bill was AM 1240?
It might have been Senator Bosselman's, but I guess I don't specifically remember the hearing.
Okay, I misplaced my sheet from last week that had the list of what bills the amendments are. If anybody has the list of what bills the amendments are, it'd be very much appreciated to be shared. But thank you, Senator John Kavanaugh. I'll be sure and get in the queue to ask about that in the future. I asked because last year when Senator John Kavanaugh brought up the canal was a big conversation that we had last year, and it is an extraordinarily expensive endeavor and undertaking to build a canal in another state. To build a canal, period, but to build a canal in another state is fraught with a lot of, as you can imagine, logistical and legal concerns and questions. So I know that this was what is it called? Something design. And I know the word's in here. Design build contract means a contract between the department and a design builder, which is subject to the best value-based selection process to furnish architectural, engineering, and related design services and labor, material, supplies, equipment, and construction services. And so I just was curious about how that plays into the canal. Senator Bosselman, yield to a question?
Senator Bostelman, will you yield to a question?
Yes.
Senator Bosselman, I misplaced my sheet that had what bills the amendments are. Do you remember what bill AM 1240 is?
Which bill AM 1240 is?
Yes.
723.
723?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm sorry. It was the weekend.
In my refresh, I stated that.
You did. I'm sure you did. I'm still coming out of my food coma from dinner. So I apologize. I was even in here and I was listening to the soothing tones of your voice, and somehow I missed the bill number. My apologies. LB 723. Just getting myself, I see somebody else is in the queue, so I wanted to get out to let them talk while I can look up LB 723. And see what that particular bill is about. So how much time do I have left, Mr. President?
1 minute, 22 seconds.
Okay, I think I will just go ahead and yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Jacobson, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. When you start speaking of the Perkins County Canal, it usually gets my attention. I just want to remind people again that yes, this design build piece of this really was specifically designed as we look at the Perkins County Canal. And I will tell you that one of the reasons that the dollar amount is slightly higher than a year ago, but is really essentially the same number, is because of making it slightly larger to really handle more capacity of water. And that's why we're looking at a little bit larger appropriation. Let's put into context again when we think about the Perkins County Canal and why it's so important. I know Senator John Kavanaugh has read the compact, and I know Senator Kavanaugh, are we 3 or 4 pages? Probably 4, maybe 5. Okay. So in the world of compacts and attorneys must have been in some kind of a recession back when this was done, because no attorney worth their salt would do a 5-page compact today. It'd have to be 50 or 100 pages just to get warmed up. So this compact is quite simple, leaves very little ambiguity. And furthermore, if you look at challenging the compact, which Colorado has not done whatsoever, they've not indicated any challenge to the compact and the validity of the compact. Their challenge has been, will there be enough water to deliver, not whether or not we have the rights to it. The Platte River, or the Perkins County Canal, would go through a few miles of Colorado, but the bulk of this project will be inside of Nebraska, in Keith County, not Perkins. And it will be basically 2 large reservoirs, one larger, one smaller. And given the acre feet and the volume of water that we're entitled to, should fill those vessels in the winter months, and should provide, in ideal circumstances, 100% of the water that we need for releases, for irrigation and other flows that are coming out of Lake McConaughey today. Let me also tell you that just up the river here and along the way of this canal is the Gerald Gentleman Power Plant in Sutherland. That is one of the highest producing power plants in the state of Nebraska. And it needs cooling water. Critically important that it has cooling water that comes out of the Platte River. So it's critical to the operation of not only that large power plant, but it's also critical for irrigation use. And I can tell you that there were many producers that are on through that Western Canal who did not get their allocation of water last year. And you can look at aerial photos of where the water ran out, and you look at the aerial photo of where they had corn and where they didn't have corn because they were shorted the water that they deserved. This is an important project for Western Nebraska, and this is an important project for Eastern Nebraska if we want water flowing down the Platte River, and I think we do. We talk often about how important water is. If you really think about the true value of water, this $600 million is chump change. Take the water away, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we're going to look back, if we don't do this, and say, we were stupid for not spending that money when we could at the time to preserve the future of water down the Platte River. So as it relates specifically to this bill, this portion, the LB 564, which is, and particularly the amendment, is we're really dealing with the design build, which is the most cost-effective way to do a project like that, because you've got the design people that start from the beginning. They can be cut off at any time through the process and bring someone else in, but you're not re-educating new people, studying designs and trying to get it done. So I love the bill. I'm going to support the bill fully throughout. I serve on the Natural Resources Committee. And again, I thank Chairman Bostelman for all of his work on this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Jacobson. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, LB 723. So I pulled that up and now I seem to have misplaced it. Okay. It didn't have a fiscal note, so that's always a big hurdle. The bill's purpose is to authorize the Department of Natural Resources to have flexibility to utilize alternate contract delivery methods for state-sponsored water-related infrastructure projects, specifically authorizing the use of the construction management / general contractor design build and progressive design build as well as utilizing public-private partnerships for project financing. These methods will provide the department the ability to deliver certain projects in a timelier and cost-efficient manner when deemed to be in the state's best interest. So that sounds like a good thing. My next step in the process is to look and see if there were any online comments submitted for 723. No online comments. So when you don't get a committee statement with a bill, although actually I shouldn't say that because there's a committee statement with the underlying bill that probably has 723 in it. So that'll tell us who testified on it. And I'm just looking through here. We've got 567, 568, and 723. Okay. 723 creates the Public Water and Natural Resources Project Contract Act, which enables the Department of Natural Resources to employ alternative methods of contracting for public water and natural resources, public surface water, or groundwater-related infrastructure project, regardless of the funding source. The act authorizes the department to solicit and execute 3 additional methods of contracting: design-build, progressive design-build, or construction manager general contractor contracts for public surface water or groundwater-related infrastructure projects. LB 723 authorizes the department to hire an engineer or architectural consultant to assist with the development of the performance criteria and requests for proposals and any additional services as requested by the department in relation to a project, and precludes consultants used from providing services in a proposal for a project upon which they have consulted. Oh, interesting. So I'm going to reread that part. If I can get some light here. Okay. It says LB 723 authorizes the department to hire an engineering or architectural consultant to assist with the development of project performance criteria and request for proposal and any additional services as requested by the department in relation to a project. And it precludes the consultant used from providing services in a proposal for a project upon which they have consulted. That's a great guardrail. Makes a lot of sense. LB 723 directs the department to obtain requests for qualifications and compile and publish a pre-qualified contractor list, and authorizes the use of public-private partnership with the department responsible for oversight of any function that is delegated to or otherwise performed by a private partner. A technical amendment, AM 232, replaces statutory references to reference provisions within the act itself.
1 minute.
Thank you. AM 232 replaces statutory reference to the Department of Transportation's similar authority to relevant references to the Department of Natural Resources authority within the act itself. I do recall Senator Bosselman answering a question about that for me last week when we talked about this bill. It removes reporting requirement to Appropriations Committee and replaces a reference from Director State Engineer to Director of Department of Natural Resources. So, and it came out of the committee unanimous, it would appear. So, okay. I think I am about out of time, so I yield the remainder of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Wayne, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, first of all, I want to start off with, I think water is life. It's very important. We should cherish it. I'm still waiting for a Attorney General's opinion on this legality question of the Perkins Canal. I'm trying to figure out if we go into, and I've asked this for 3 years in a row now, and I still haven't got it. So if Attorney General Hildreth is listening, this is my official request for an Attorney General's opinion. I don't think that's how you do it, but we'll just go ahead and try it. We are actually going into Colorado and digging a canal. It could be 6 feet wide and 6 feet deep. My question is, who is going to police the canal? Is it State Patrol going into Colorado, or is Colorado? And the real question is, for some of my criminal clients that I represent, is it legal to smoke on the canal if I'm in the water, or do I have to be on land? These are serious issues facing Nebraska. We need to figure that out today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Senator John Kavanaugh, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate Senator Wayne's questions. I'd also like to know the answers to those. So first off, I just printed out the compact because I wanted to see how many pages it was. And Senator Jacobson, it's 8 pages printed off. So a little bit longer. I guess we both underestimated. It might have been longer when they did it, or maybe they did it like in 1923 was like on just one piece of vellum or something like that. Just one big piece of paper. But I will refresh my recollection on this at some point. But I just wanted to be clear that my position on the canal is not that I'm opposed to the canal at this point. I just have always wanted to be very, I guess, play the role of the what do you call it? The cynic, the person who's questioning what's going on before we spend $600 million on something. And I know, like, if you go out there, if you had the opportunity to go out and tour, which I have, been out to Julesburg, which is in the state of Colorado, and seen the Julesburg gauge, and been through some of the western irrigation district there and seen their dry irrigation canals. And I've been to Lake McConaughey and seeing how low the water was there. And actually, if Senator Jacobson probably remembers this, when we were out there last fall, a truck with hay on the back of it caught fire right in front of us while we were all waiting to eat lunch when we stopped at Lake McConaughey. It was quite a sight, but that's how dry things were out there this year. We saw pictures of the Platte River being basically a dry riverbed, and how, and Senator Jacobson's correct, that there's a heavy dependence for cooling at Gerald Gentleman. We use it for hydroelectric generation at both the Kingsley Dam and, I guess I don't remember the name of the other dam, but the one that's just east of Gerald Gentleman, or I guess just a hydro production. But we use it for all those things. We use it for irrigation. So water is, as Senator Wayne just said, life. And so it's really important that we secure our water rights and that we make sure that we have this opportunity. And there's a lot of things, a lot of good uses that we can put this water to. And of course, it's our water. We should make sure it's our responsibility to make sure we get it. I'm just saying, as it pertains at least to this bill, at this moment, I'm still, not going to be 100% in support of spending the money to build the canal. That said, I see the value the canal brings. I have questions about I'm still questioning whether or not this building the canal will actually ensure that we get the water. And those are questions I'm hoping we can get answered satisfactorily before we spend the money. And of course, I am curious about how Colorado will react once when we drive the backhoes in and start dredging up this canal in the state of Colorado. But I would say this is the interesting thing for those of you who haven't been out there. You go to Colorado and you see the area where the canal, you can actually see where the original canal was begun. There's kind of like berms and gullies that kind of parallel the road in part of the northeast Colorado, where they had begun digging and then stopped back 100 years ago. So that's, interesting sightseeing out there. But I just wanted to make sure, be clear. I'm not speaking against the canal at the moment. I'm speaking in favor of, if we do build the canal, let's do it as efficiently as we can. And I will take some time to read the compact, because I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to revisit all of the 8 pages of it in the near future, including
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll just give you a little preview. We can talk about Delph Carpenter, who I believe was called the Silver Fox of the Rockies. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, you are recognized to speak, and this is your 3rd time on the bracket.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, so yeah, this is my last time to speak on the bracket, so we'll probably go to a vote on the bracket any moment now. Yeah, I had things to say, but you know what? I'm just going to yield the remainder of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. There's no one in the queue. Senator Hunt, you're recognized to close on the bracket. Don't see Senator Hunt. So the question is for the body, the bracket motion. All those in favor, vote aye. All those opposed, vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
0 ayes, 27 nays on the motion to bracket, Mr. President.
The bracket motion fails. Turning to debate on AM 1240. Senator Bostelman, you're recognized to close on AM 1240.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for a green vote on AM 1240. That is, the bill is LB 723. The bill come out of committee with an 8-0 vote. I ask for a green vote on AM 1240. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bostelman. The question for the body is the adoption of AM 1240. All those in favor, vote aye. All those opposed, vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
33 ayes, no nays, Mr. President, on adoption of the amendment.
The amendment is adopted. Mr. Clerk, for items.
Mr. President, some items quickly. Your Committee on Enrollment Review reports legislative bill 243 and 583 to select file, both having E&R amendments. Additionally, your Committee on Appropriations, chaired by Senator Clements, reports legislative bill 130 to general file with committee amendments. Returning to legislative bill 565, Mr. President, the second division consists of AM 1242. Mr. President, I understand that is legislative bill 567, AM 1242.
Senator Bostelman, you're recognized to open on the second division.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, colleagues. As a reminder, LB 567, which is AM 1242, was part of the committee priority bill that come out of 565. It was the committee priority bill come out as 8-0 vote. So AM 1242 includes the provisions of LB 567, which strikes language that prevents special high-level managers of a district from running for the board of directors of any district. Specifically, a high-level manager of a rural electric association is disqualified from running for the board of directors of a public power district, which would be NPPD or OPPD, unless they resign or take a leave of absence. Currently, 12 of NREA's 34 members receive their power wholesale from companies located outside of Nebraska. Of those 12, 10 members receive their power wholesale from Westminster, Colorado, and 2 more receive their power from Rushmore Electric Power Cooperative headquarters in Rapid City, South Dakota. Currently, a person who resides in Nebraska and is a high-level manager of Chimney Rock Public Power District who receives its wholesale power from Colorado is prevented from running for the board of directors of NPPD. Similarly, a high-level manager of Burke County Public Power who receives its power wholesale from NPPD and lives in OPPD service area is disqualified from running for OPPD's board of directors. In the committee hearing, we had a gentleman from Chadron, Nebraska testify. He is a retail customer of NPPD and has a vested interest in serving on their board of directors. However, he is prohibited from doing so because he is a general manager of Northwest Rural Public Power District. Northwest Rural Public Power District does not purchase its power from NPPD. They receive it from Colorado. Simply put, this change would allow a high-level manager of one district to be qualified to run for a board position of another public power district. similar to how a mayor of one of the 30 municipalities who purchases power wholesale from NPPD can already run and serve on the board of NPPD. Some have raised concerns about the potential for conflicts of interest in having someone who works for the Rural Public Power District serve on the board of another public power district such as NPPD. However, under State Statute 7655, all rates, tolls, rents, charges shall be fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory, end quote. This means that all rates are uniform. That means the contract for all of their contracts that they have, everybody purchase power, it's all the same. One cannot be any different than the other. I've also spoken to the Executive Director of the Accountability and Disclosure, Frank Daly, about this issue. He has explained to me that a conflict of interest does not exist if it involves businesses between one governmental entity and another governmental entity. The only situations where a conflict of interest could exist is if a person, their family, or a business they own is gaining financially. The bill also adds a definition of reliable or reliability. This does not create a new standard for an electric supplier, and the definition only applies to transmission and distribution of electricity. Section 70-1001 was drafted in 1963 with an emphasis on adequacy in transmission, which we have defined in statute. Since 1963, the term reliable has become more prevalent in the public and in the energy electricity industry conversations. Further, the Power Review Board has indicated LB 567 seeks to give a basic uniform understanding of the term when being discussed in the context of public power in Nebraska. The bill also adds a new section to the load and capability portion of 70-1025. The new section allows a Power Review Board to request information to be included in the annual report as long as the request is feasible and can be performed at a reasonable cost. I want to thank both Public Power and the Power Review Board, who have both worked on the writing of this bill. The committee voted yes, 6 yes, and 2 present not voting to include LB 567 and the committee amendment. Again, I ask for your green vote on AM 1242 and the underlying bill LB 565. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Bostman. Senator DeKay, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of LB 565 and Amendment 1242. Senator Bostman put it pretty straightforward on what we are talking about today with these officers being able to be elected to the Nebraska Public Power Board, OPS and LES. The entities involved in this regard public power managers, board of directors from rural public powers to be able to run for these boards. They have a vested interest in MPPD and LES and OPPD. There are right now people that are employees for MPPD that live in the OPPD district that cannot run for this board, but yet they're still paying their power charges to OPPD. Vice versa, OPPD has people living within the MPPD district that they cannot run for these. And on the other side of the coin, there are retail power suppliers that for Nebraska communities that can run. So this just evens the playing field and makes it fair and for everybody involved to be able to run for these boards. And they are being supported by Nebraska Rural Electric, the public power districts of the state, and Nebraska Power Review Board. So like I say, I rise in support of 1242 and I yield back the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator DeKay. Senator Brandt, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. I stand in support of AM 1242 and the overlying bill 565. This bill that was proposed originally happened in 2016 when a general manager of Norris Public Power tried to run for the Nebraska Public Power District Board and was unsuccessful. After that, then they passed a statute that said GMs could not run. I think that was a mistake, as with most elections. And I think nobody in the state, other than what's in this room, has a real grasp on what an election can be like. The voters can decide whether that person is qualified for that position. And I guess with that, I would ask if Senator DeKay would yield to a question.
Senator DeKay, will you yield to a question?
Yes.
Senator DeKay, you ran and were successful to be on NPPD's board several times. Is that correct?
I was on for one term, so yes,
But you ran for election.
absolutely.
And you invested a lot of time and effort to convince the voters that you were the right person for that job. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, if a general manager from one of the power districts were to run for this position, it isn't a slam dunk. They would have to go out and convince their constituents that they were the best person for the job.
Absolutely. And if I can expound on that just a little bit, while I was on the board, and a retired manager from Stanton Public Power with vast knowledge of the industry from distribution to generation to transmission, served and was very, very well accepted on the board, and his expertise was very valuable to the board of MPPD.
All right. Thank you, Senator DeKay. I would yield my time back to the chair.
Thank you, Senator DeKay and Brandt. Senator John Kavanaugh, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Lieutenant Governor, as Senator Brandt said, I usually stick with Mr. President so I don't screw up. So I'm rise in opposition to 1242. I was one of the two not votings in committee. I still supported the whole package and still do support the whole package, but I was opposed to this section. So I appreciate what Senator DeKay is saying and his experience about that. And I did want to say I do appreciate there's a lot of parts to this particular section, and Senator Bosselman, did a nice job of explaining all of them, but kind of some of the other parts get lost, and the kind of reliability portion of it. I know that Senator Bosselman worked very hard over the last 2 years as I've been on the Natural Resources Committee with kind of the stakeholders about that. And I think if this bill were brought or was brought previous session, you would have seen the power companies were opposed, the public power entities were opposed to that similar reliability and the Power Review Board study portion. So Senator Bosselman did work diligently to get that into a position where he brought those folks on board. So I appreciate his work and diligence on that. And I know it wasn't easy to get it to that point. But having sat on this in the hearing and listened to the testimony of the folks who came in favor and opposed. As Senator Brandt pointed out, there was an incident. I guess incident is probably not the right word, but there was a time when somebody who was a high-level employee at one public power district wanted to run for a board of another public power district, and that person ultimately lost. But it did create the precipitating event for the legislature to make this change in the statute that I think passed something like unanimously, 43 votes or something along those lines, what we were told. But there we have a wonderful system in the state of Nebraska with our public utilities, public power, and we're very blessed in that regard. It's one of the things that sets us apart from everybody else. We're the first only entirely public power state. And so we benefit greatly, I think, from that unique structure. And we should be careful about how we structure that. These are businesses that are in not necessarily direct competition, but some of them do purchase power from each other. And so there is a pecuniary and monetary interest in how these work. And so there is a concern about industries becoming too insular. Like it's great to have experience. And Senator DeKay pointed out a retired member serving on the board brought great experience, but that was a retired member. And so it didn't have a current active interest ongoing. And so we should be very careful about allowing that kind of cross contamination. I've often noted that as members of the legislature, we're not allowed to work for other parts of the state. So, we can't be professors at the university. You can't work for one of the other departments. You could work for a different part of government. I remember hearing about somebody running last time or thinking about running last time who was a city administrator. But that gave me a bit of a pause too, to think that somebody was running a city would be serving in the legislature. And so it is, I understand the attractiveness about this, and I understand that it seems like a small thing to say, let's let people who have this particular expertise in this field serve on these boards. And there are some of them, as Senator Bosman correctly pointed out, who don't actually engage in commerce with the other power districts we're talking about.
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. But that said, that maybe is an argument for structuring a ban in a different way, to say that if you serve on work for a power board that doesn't buy its power from the elected board, then maybe you could run for that board or something along those lines. There's some sort of still separation. So these are not people who are working for essentially a customer of the public power entity, because we need to make sure that we are protecting these entities. So that's why I voted against it. But like I said, I still supported the whole package. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Dungan, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do rise in support of LB 565. I guess I still have some questions regarding AM 1242. Like many others in this body, I receive a number of emails that I do go out of my way to try to read all of them myself. And I actually received a surprising amount of emails regarding AM 1242. I think this bill is a good example of why it's so helpful to have members in the committee that can talk to us a little bit more about the amendments and the bills they heard. So I've had a chance to speak with a number of senators who were on this committee about this amendment and kind of where it came from. I think the bulk of my concerns have been sort of at least previewed by Senator John Kavanaugh, and also Senator Decay and Bostman spoke as to some of the things that are contained in the amendment. We've talked a little bit about the provision in AM 1242 with regards to who can run for what. The provision that I actually received the most emails about was the reliability standard that's put in there. One thing that I think we can all agree on is that we need energy that is reliable, and we need energy power that's provided on a regular basis. I know that's something we all share here in this state, and we share here in this body, is ensuring that all of our constituents have power when they need it, because we hear stories from other states about rolling blackouts, and we hear stories from other states regarding some of the problems they've run into. And I'm very excited to say that Nebraska doesn't really have a lot of those problems. And I, too, am a big fan of our public power districts. I personally am served by LES, and I've had a chance to speak with them a number of times this session. And so I do appreciate the work that's gone into this bill as a package from Senator Bostelman and the rest of the folks on the committee. I think the question that's been raised with regards to putting in that reliability standard is a concern that it's going to, in some way, shape, or form, stifle the possibility of growth when it comes to renewable energy. And I understand there's a lot of differing opinions regarding renewable energy, but I think at the end of the day, I would at least hope we can all agree that when you take concerns like cost and things like that out, that we all want to make sure we're being responsible stewards of our land, of our water, of our air, and things like that. And I think we've seen great developments over the last few decades in particular when it comes to renewable energy. And one of the things that I think is important to note is that despite the fact that a lot of renewable energy is inherently variable in its nature, that technology and other things that we've developed over the last couple of decades have made it so that despite the variability of some of that renewable energy, it can be managed in such a way that we still get consistent power and consistent benefits. This was raised in an email that I received that I think a few of us got, and I just wanted to read a part about that to kind of, I think, further define some of the concerns. And that person wrote, "With respect to the definition of reliability, it's important to ensure that our energy sources are dependable, but defining reliability too narrowly could stifle innovation and limit the potential benefits of renewable energy. Again, as I just stated, renewable energy sources are inherently variable. The wind doesn't always blow and the sun doesn't always shine. This variability, however, can be managed through a combination of technologies and strategies such as energy storage and smart grid systems. Narrowly defining reliability could limit the growth of renewable energy in Nebraska, discourage investment in renewable energy projects, and ultimately limit the economic benefits that come from a thriving renewable energy industry. including job creation and increased tax revenue. Since I've been involved in the legislature, I've had an opportunity to speak with many people about the benefits that renewable energy brings to our state. I think this email we received touches on a number of those, but specifically the job creation that we see and the innovation that we see from that is incredibly important. And so I want to make sure that we as a state are doing everything we can to balance that concern, right? You can balance on one hand being an innovator, and thank you, Mr. President, being an innovator and being a state that does our best to create new energy sources and create jobs while still ensuring that we're making sure that people have reliable energy, that they don't have these rolling blackouts. And so I do think this bill overall, LB 565, addresses a number of those concerns. I remain curious to hear a little bit more about the reliability standard contained in AM 1242, but overall rise in support of the package, despite my concerns about this amendment. And I do think it represents a compromise. I just want to make sure that we as a body continue to do everything we can to be good stewards of our earth and try to do our best to develop renewable energy sources that are reliable when we can. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Dungan. Senator DeKay, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. There might be some concerns that special rates might be negotiated because of the opinion of a board member. That won't happen because of an 11-person board, and the mission of it is still to have reliability and cost efficiency. And conflict of interest won't happen because of the 35 public power districts and co-ops that make up our public power grid in the state of Nebraska all have the same rates. And public power is a not-for-profit organization, and public power also needs all of its customers to achieve its mission statement, which is reliability and cost efficiency. In the state of Nebraska, we have a great energy portfolio, which includes nuclear, coal, natural gas, wind, solar arrays. So we're trying to touch all the buttons, and we are working at everything going forward in the state of Nebraska to have the best portfolio, to be as cost efficient, environmentally friendly as we can be, but to keep it within the rates that our ratepayers can afford. So with that, I yield back the rest of my time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator DeKay. Senator Bostelman, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to address a couple comments from Senator Dungan, which I appreciate. First of all, we're not creating a standard. We're not creating a standard. So a standard applies to any type of generation. So we're not creating a standard, we're providing a definition. The definition is for the transmission and distribution of the aggregate of all of the businesses, whether it's wind, solar, gas, coal, nuclear, hydro. What the reliability, what the definition says is that you were able to, the NPPD provides that down the power lines and to the end customer. Does not set up a standard of saying this one type of generation source over another. It basically takes the FERC and NERC definitions, because what we hear in committee and when we talk with public power and others, we hear the term reliability. Adequacy was a term that was used back in the 60s. And since that time, more and more, we've gone away from adequacy and we've gone to reliability. Adequacy deals with the same thing, delivering that power down the lines to the end customer. Reliability, what this is definition saying that exactly you're going to deliver that down the transmission line to the end customer. It takes all, it doesn't delineate, it isn't prescriptive to any type of generation, but it takes all that generation, says we're going to reliably take that aggregate of all that generation and deliver it down the wire to the customer where we need it. So that's what we're doing with the definition. Again, it's not a standard. I went back and forth with public power on this quite a bit on the standard, and that's not what this is. This is specifically on the reliability of the transmission, getting the electricity down the wires and to the end customer. I hope that answers the question. I'll be glad to talk to you more off the mic if you'd like. The other question, I wonder if Senator Kay would be willing to yield to a question or two.
Senator Decay, will you yield to a question?
Yes.
Senator Kay, thank you. As you stated before, you sat on the NPPD Board of Directors, correct? You were a director?
Absolutely, yes.
So one of the comments that we're hearing is conflict of interest. And if you reflect back on your time as a director, do you feel one director specifically, or two directors, or three directors would have the opportunity to really sway, because you don't set rates by area, it's the entire contract? I mean, do you think that what you've seen, any of the directors would have the remote possibility of really making a direct conflict within this?
No, it would take the effort of a majority of the board to work on that, but we also, or Nebraska Public Power, from my experience there, also uses the resources of our management team to give us the right information, so we do know what our fixed costs are going to be, what our cost of generation, transmission, and the millions of dollars it takes. So we did take that all into account, and that's how rates are set, and that's how we go forward. Yep.
Thank you. So I think the conflict of interest from Senator Kay's experience on the board is remote at best, if at all. You know, the other thing I want to touch on too is that we've had lobbyists for generation companies that sat on the boards already. OPPD had two lobbyists that sat on their board of directors that passed contracts that benefited those who they represented. So a conflict of interest, that's a significant conflict of interest. We also had a gentleman on NPPD's board who installed solar panels. So if we're having presidents of company or lobbyists who are representing companies who actually can benefit from this directly, I really, I don't think, from what Senator Kay has said and talking to John McClure from NPPD, you know, that conflict is remote at best, if it can happen at all. I think they do a very good job on OPPD and NPPD with the direction and oversight from the CEOs and presidents. I think that we just need to move on. I support AM 1242 and LB 565, and would ask for your green vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Bostoman. Senator John Kavanaugh, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the conversation. It looks like I'm the last one in the queue on this one. And I really do appreciate having expertise. This is a good lesson in expertise. Senator Decay previously served on the NPPD board, and he brings that expertise to the conversation we're having. And I appreciate that. And I would just point out to Senator Bosselman's last point, when we had this conversation, I think during the hearing, I brought up, or that the example of other folks serving on the board having those other conflicts was brought up, and I suggested, why don't we ban that as well? I do think there is an argument to be made to make sure that we're not having people with financial interests in this industry participating in those decision making. But I'm not suggesting that at this point. The bill is baked, and I don't have an amendment to propose or anything along those lines. But I do think it is important that, though there is the folks who serve on these boards are public servants, and I don't know what NPPD gets paid, but I think the OPPD board gets paid about the same as we do. And they're regulating, they're overseeing a hugely important industry in the state, and reliability is key to that. And we had a hearing last year, 2 years ago now, about the rolling blackouts. We were the first hearing of its kind after there were those rolling blackouts as a result of the freezing storm in Oklahoma and Texas. And the guy from SPP came up and said, you guys are the first ones to be asking all these questions. And we had that hearing because we were, in Nebraska, we're so shocked at having something like that happen because of the diligence of our public power companies and their elected boards and everybody who works for them, because everybody has such pride in the work they're doing. That said, it really is, what do they say? The road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? People who were intending to bring their expertise and intending to bring their objectivity and intending to recuse themselves, which I'm sure they certainly would do if somebody gets elected, will do all the things right and intended with all the best intentions. But it's the relationships and those side conversations and all those other things that, are potential recipe for a problem. And so that is generally why I'm opposed to this, is just it gets too close to the potentiality for a conflict and getting into that area of causing a problem for our public powers providers. And so that's why I'm opposed to that. Like I said, I voted, present not voting in committee. I plan to vote against this section today. And then we can have the rest of the conversation about 565. So I think I'm the last one. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Mr. Clerk, for an announcement.
Quickly, Mr. President, thank you. Announcement, the Agriculture Committee will meet in executive session under the north balcony at 7:15. Agriculture Committee executive session, north balcony, 7:15.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Seeing no one in the queue, Senator Bostelman, you're recognized to close on AM 1242.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank Senator John Kavanaugh, Senator Duncan, Senator Kay for participation in the AM 1242. Again, I would ask for a green light on AM 1242 and underlying bill LB 565. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Members, the question is the adoption of the second division, AM 1242. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
31 ayes, 2 nays, Mr. President, on adoption of the amendment.
AM 1242 is adopted.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Clerk, for items.
Mr. President, concerning Legislative Bill 565, the third division is AM 1244, which I understand is LB 565.
Senator Bostelman, you're recognized to open on the amendment.
Am I on 565 or 568, Mr. Clerk?
565.
565? Okay. AM 1244 to LB 565. Thank you, Mr. President. AM 1244 includes the provisions of LB 565, which would assist the Hydrogen Hub Working Group in continuation of their work authorized by the legislature in 2022. Nebraska has a tremendous opportunity to lead in the growing hydrogen economy, benefiting Nebraskans by creating new products and markets for our ag industry, providing high-quality jobs, including in rural communities, solidifying access to the fertilizers necessary for Nebraska and our region, and providing more food security for the people we feed around the globe during a time of international energy and fertilizer shortages. The Federal Regional Clean Hydrogen Hubs program, or H2 Hubs, was part of a larger $8 billion Regional Clean Hydrogen Hubs program funded through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. The program proposes to establish 6 to 10 regional clean hydrogen hubs across America. These hydrogen hubs will create networks of hydrogen producers, consumers, and local connective infrastructure to accelerate hydrogen as a clean energy resource. During the 2022 Nebraska Legislative Session, LB 1099, a bill to create the Nebraska Hydrogen Hub Industry Work Group, was passed and signed into law. The industries represented on the work group include Monolith Materials, Werner Trucking, Union Pacific, Nebraska Farm Bureau, Tallgrass Energy, and Nebraska Public Power District, who has taken the lead on this effort. They've worked with a leading engineering firm on sophisticated linear programming modeling that put forth a competitive proposal. There is a potential for more than $1 billion of matching dollars from the federal program for the projects identified in the regional hub application. This would serve to accelerate the development of production, transportation, and ultimately consumption of hydrogen-related products in Nebraska and our other partner states. Nebraska has partnered with Iowa, Missouri to form the Mid-Continent Clean Energy Hydrogen Hub, or MCH2, and submitted their initial proposal to DOE for the hydrogen hub. Of the 79 proposals submitted to DOE, only 33, one of which was a Nebraska, Iowa, and Missouri proposal, were encouraged to move to the next phase. The H2 hubs will be a central driver in helping communities across the country benefit from clean energy investments, good paying jobs, and improved energy security. This opportunity gives Nebraska and our agricultural producers and industries an opportunity to further diversify their product offerings and revenue streams with hydrogen-enhanced biofuels, including sustainable aviation fuel from ethanol, renewable diesel for trucks, tractors, and trains. It helps create better, more secure access to the fertilizers necessary to continue being a leader in global ag production. And it creates an opportunity for our transportation industries and electric generating utilities to further diversify their fuel sources. The next steps, including submitting a full application to DOE, will require significant additional engineering and modeling, showing the DOE the production capabilities necessary connective infrastructure to move the hydrogen and hydrogen-related products and the potential consumption in the state. The engineering and modeling will be needed as projects progress through the FOA timeline, which are normally 2 to 3 years for the first set of projects to get off the ground. That brings us to LB 565 or AM 1244, which allocates $250,000 in FY 23-24 and FY 24-25 from general funds to the Department of Economic Development for the purpose of providing grants to the Nebraska Hydrogen Hub Industry Work Group to continue their work. These grants would be utilized by the group for engineering and modeling work to prepare and support the group in the next step of their submission for one of the Department of Energy's Regional Clean Hydrogen Hub designations and associated funding. I want to thank NPD, who has taken the lead role in pulling these industries together to put forth this competitive proposal. This includes submitting a full application to DOE, which will require significant additional engineering and modeling, showing DOE the production capabilities necessary connective infrastructure to move the hydrogen and hydrogen-related products and the potential consumption in the state. LB 565 will ensure the work group has the funds to carry out any needed engineering and modeling. I would ask for your support of LB or AM 1244. 565 did come out of committee with an 8-0 vote, so I'd ask for a green vote on 1244 and underlining bill 565. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Bostelman. Senator Decay, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of LB 565 and AM 1244. From my experience on Nebraska Public Power District Board of Directors, I think we already have a good blend of power generation that is both reliable and affordable to consumers. We get about 50% of our power from coal out of plants like Gerald Gentleman in Sutherland, 18% from nuclear out of Cooper Nuclear Station, about 25% from wind, and the rest from a variety of sources such as solar and natural gas. At the same time, more can be done to diversify where Nebraska gets its electricity. I believe hydrogen has great potential. From what I have learned, hydrogen is a very clean, reliable source of energy. Green hydrogen takes the carbon black out of natural gas. The product left over in the process of hydrogen, which can then be used to generate electricity or create ammonia for fertilizer. About 99% of the remaining residue is water. With this in mind, hydrogen offers a pathway to create a cleaner electric grid that offers more reliability with less infrastructure build out, which could complement the reliable clean energy, clean electricity. Additionally, there's a growing hydrogen economy growing in this country. We have an opportunity to try and bring some of these dollars and benefits to Nebraska, such as creating new products and markets for our ag industry, providing high quality jobs, including in rural communities, enhancing access to fertilizers necessary for food product amidst the during time of international energy and fertilizer shortages. We have a potential to fuel trucks, heavy machinery, ag equipment, locomotives, airplanes with hydrogen. There are billions of dollars out there for states who claim to develop hydrogen hubs. I know Nebraska Public Power District has taken a lead role in pulling together industry partners to put forth this competitive proposal. Now they need our assistance from the statewide. LB 565 with AM 1244 would help make Nebraska more competitive in securing these funds. Thank you. I yield back the rest of my time.
Thank you, Senator Decay. Mr. Clerk, for a priority motion.
Mr. President, Senator Michaela Cavanaugh moved to bracket legislative bill 565 until June 1st, 2023.
Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues. Okay, we are on AM 1244, which is LB 565. And I'm just gonna get back into my groove, after dinner groove, of chit-chatting it up again. So let's see here. 565, underlying bill. Oh, that is the underlying. The underlying bill. Okay. So 565, introduced by Senator Bosselman. Amend section 66-2301 to fund steps necessary to continue forward with competition for designation by the United States Department of Energy as one of 4 regional locations sought for clean hydrogen hub. LB 565 follows the first round success of competition under Nebraska under LB 1099 in 2022. LB 565 directs appropriation of $250,000 from the general fund for FY23-24 and $250,000 for FY24-25 to the Department of Economic Development for the grants needed for engineering and modeling work to prepare and support the next round of competition for the regional hub designation and associated federal funding. Section by section. Section 1, legislative findings about, quote, unique benefit for the state to compete by designation, for designation by the U.S. Department of Energy as a location for a regional clean hydrogen hub, end quote. Appropriation intention directs the Department of Economic Development to adopt and promulgate rules and regulations to carry out the program. Section 2 repeals original section. Section 3, emergency clause. Okay. So let's see here. Underlying bill 565. Let's see. The A bill is after this, and the A bill appropriate $250 from the general fund and $200,000 from the Nuclear and Hydrogen Development Fund for FY 23-24, and $250 from the general fund and $0 from the Nuclear Hydrogen Development Fund for FY 24-25 to the Department of Economic Development for Program 603 to aid in carrying out the provisions of Legislative Bill 656. So, would Senator Bosselman yield to a question? It's about the fiscal or the A bill.
Senator Bosselman, will you yield?
Of course.
Thank you, Senator Bosselman. So in the A bill, it appropriates $200 the first year from the Nuclear Hydrogen Development Fund, but nothing the next year. Is that some sort of setup cost, or what is that about?
So the $200,000 is a question. So the $200,000 is for per diem for those who may travel to come in to allow for that for the time of the extent of of that group existence.
Okay. And I'm not familiar with the height. So we have a nuclear hydrogen development fund currently?
No.
Oh, are we creating it?
Yes.
Okay, we are creating it and putting 250 in it and then using 200 of it?
So on 568 is what what you're talking about, there's the two different ones. So for the hydrogen working group, the 200,000 we're creating so they have per diem, because we had individuals come in and testify from Arkansas and South Carolina that do this. And then you also have the community colleges or state colleges. You may have NPPD, you may have at-large people that may travel in for meetings. So we just wanted to make sure we had something there just to cover travel costs if they wanted it.
Okay, but I'm curious. We're creating a fund.
For $200,000 for that
Okay.
working group to use for per diem.
Okay. And
And
then
if
we're
they
not,
don't use it, it comes back into general funds.
okay. Do they have to use it in the 1 year period, or do we leave it there for the biennium?
They leave it there for the biennium.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I put you on the spot there and you answered my questions wonderfully. Thank you. This is the dangerous thing about when I start reading things, I start to get questions about them. So, okay, so we are on LB 565 and the amendment is LB 565. And so I appreciate Senator Bosselman answering my questions about that, the A bill. I'm trying to find the fiscal note on 565. So our bills are actually kind of color coded. You have the green copy, which is the original introduced bill because it's on green paper. There's white pages in between, usually if there are more than 2 pages, but that's the green copy. Then the pink page is the fiscal notes, usually printed on pink paper. And so I have found the pink page. So it intends to appropriate 250,000. Okay. So then I'm going to another pink page. So much like when earlier today I was discussing the revenue package or packages of bills and the article in the Nebraska Examiner talking about how there is all these packages of bills, and now we got the fiscal notes back from them once we move them from general to select. So that'll happen with this because there's multiple bills within this bill. And so as the bill moves, we will have a new fiscal note, and it'll be just one fiscal note instead of having to look through all the fiscal notes. And every bill gets a fiscal note. Sometimes it is literally nothing, like basically a blank page because it says, this does not appropriate any money or cost anything. Okay, 568. I got there eventually, Senator Bosselman. I find 568 where we are creating the Nuclear Hydrogen Development Act. Thank you. Getting a little tired, dragging a little bit. My brain is slowly catching up to the bill itself. Okay, how much time do I have, Mr. President?
2 minutes, 21 seconds.
So, well, I don't want to jump ahead on 568, so I guess I should go back to 565. And the amendments to 565 is, wait, that's the original amendment. Oh, and then these are the individual amendments. I've got a lot of paper here. Okay, so the original amendment was 24 pages. The original bill itself was 3 pages, not 2.5 really. So, that's what happens when we build our beautiful Christmas trees. It's the intention of the legislature to appropriate $250,000 from the general fund and $250,000 in FY23, 24, and FY24, 25 to the Department of Economic Development for the purposes of providing grants to any public power district that serves a majority of the counties in the state to be used for engineering and modeling work to prepare and support the state in competing for one of the United States Department of Energy's regional clean hydrogen hub designations.
1 minute.
Thank you, and associated federal funding. The Department of Economic Development shall adopt and promulgate rules and regulations to carry out the grant program described in subsection 3 of this section. Okay, I am in the queue, and I think there's other people in the queue, so I will yield the remainder of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Mr. Clerk, for a clarification.
Mr. President, I just wanted to clarify, Senator Kavanaugh, you opened on MO 938. Pursuant to that rule change, the bracket motion, we had already had a bracket motion, so we'll consider this the recommit MO 938.
Senator John Kavanaugh, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I rise in opposition to the motion to recommit, and I was opposed to the bracket motion. But I am in support of AM 1244. I think this is the opportunity presented for the Regional Clean Hydrogen Hub is an exciting one. And we are uniquely situated in Nebraska for a number of reasons, geographically situated, and our participation of our local government, but also the business partners that have grown up and developed in Nebraska, I think is a really great opportunity. But I wanted to kind of read, this is from the Department of Energy's website, and it's actually from 7 hours ago, I think it said. I'm trying to find the timestamp on here, but when I opened it, it said 7 hours ago. The Regional Clean Hydrogen Program, or H2 hubs, includes up to $7 billion to establish 6 to 10 clean regional hubs across America, as part of the larger $8 billion hydrogen hub program funded through the bipartisan infrastructure law. So that was the Infrastructure and Jobs Act that was passed in spring of 2021 to jumpstart the economy and to reinvest in lots of industries across the country. So this is a federal act passed during the previous session of Congress, signed by President Biden, to fund $700 billion in investment in jumpstarting a new industry, or taking an industry that exists and helping it grow to maturity, and incentivizing businesses and governments to work together to capture that kind of innovation. And as you heard Senator Bosselman talk about, our partners here in Nebraska have worked to partner with our neighboring states and other entities to put forward a package, a application that made it past the first round, is advancing on to the next round. And so we have an opportunity to bring home up to $1 billion, sounds like, an investment in a technology that could foster an industry here in Nebraska, that could make us a envy of the rest of the country. And I appreciated Senator Decay's recitation of a lot of the energy production we have in the state. And so the name I couldn't remember, I went and found out, is North Platte Hydro Plant. I said the reason I couldn't remember it is it wasn't a very exciting name. Not to malign North Platte, I just, it's not an exciting name when you have something like Gerald Gentleman and Kingsley Dam and Lake McConaughey, a lot of just more exciting names. But anyway, I digress. We have a great portfolio of a generation in the state of Nebraska, but one of the problems that everybody experiences going forward is finding these cleaner, renewable energy sources that can replace some of the things that you just can't really do with, say, batteries. There's just some jobs you need a liquid fuel for. And Senator Bosselman talked about, ethanol and jet fuel. and things like that. And there's a real opportunity.
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President, to advance this technology and for Nebraska to be one of the centers where this happens going forward in this country. And we get to do that in partnership with our local governments, our public power districts, our business partners, our neighboring states, to create a hub to develop this. And so this $250,000 investment is the next step after we passed a bill last year to continue down this process, to continue pursuing our application, and to make sure we put the best foot forward to try to bring home $1 billion in federal funds to build up this industry, to make us an even more attractive place for this kind of research and development and industrial industry. So I would, again, be opposed to the motion to recommit, in favor of AM 1244. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Hunt, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good eye, guys. I changed the mic. I had a couple questions about renewable energy as it pertains to LB 565 and the amendments therein, but I wanted to finish some thoughts that I had on this on Thursday when we were talking about this, and also continuing the conversation that we were having earlier today as well. I would like to be in a legislature where somebody who is a registered Republican, someone who is conservative, would stand up and condemn the Westboro Baptist Church. I think that in past years when see, this is something I can picture Senator Williams doing or Senator Stinner doing. When I talked to Senator Stinner after the January 6th insurrection happened, he was horrified. And I was like, hey man, that's your team. And he's like, yeah, I cannot believe what a situation we've gotten ourselves into. And, you know, the Westboro Baptist Church, these are the people who hold up signs that say, thank God for dead vets, thank God for dead cops. They came and protested at the funeral of Carrie Arrozo in Omaha when she died in the line of duty. And I can hardly think of anything that's more of a bipartisan handshake in this country than not wanting the Westboro Baptist Church to be showing up, especially in support of a bill. And this is the danger of the anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ rhetoric that we see growing around this nation, which, by the way, is not a winning electoral issue. All over the country, people are losing on this issue, and people are facing inflation. People are facing economic hardships, education, healthcare. And there was this video that went kind of viral yesterday on Twitter of this guy drinking a Bud Light, just being like, okay, so you know how Bud Light did this commercial with Dylan Mulvaney, who I had never heard of, but she's apparently a trans model or celebrity, and she's trans, and she got a contract with Bud Light, and as a result, a whole bunch of people are boycotting Bud Light. Travis Tritt, the country singer, is saying, like, I'm never going to support Anheuser-Busch again, this and that. The thing that the predictable thing has happened, which is like people buying all of these huge cases of Bud Light just to destroy it, which is not really, getting the company at all if you're spending a whole bunch of money to buy their product just to destroy it. But I'm really curious about how this anti-trans stuff even benefits the GOP. It played very badly in Wisconsin last week in the Supreme Court election, and there's reason to think that it doesn't play well elsewhere either. There was a post I was reading. And they make the point of the massive trail of destruction wreaked by American movement conservatives. Their persecution of sexual and gender minorities has been of one of their most utterly vile projects. Out of murderous bigotry and a desire for votes, they have spent decades leveraging the power of the American state to make the lives of LGBT people as miserable and short as possible. From the genocidal neglect of the HIV/AIDS crisis, to the criminalization of the most basic acts of daily life for LGBT people, to the constant demonization of innocent people to win votes.
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. The right has committed innumerable atrocities to destroy the lives of LGBT people. Through it all, their only limits have stood where their hatred started to become a political liability. The only limit stands when the hatred starts to become a political liability. So the gist is that anti-trans politics don't help the GOP. I should say what that was from. This was from Ettinger Mentum newsletter. This is a Substack that has a whole bunch of subscribers that I read sometimes. And I totally agree that most people, Republicans for sure, do not care about this issue at all. They want government out of their lives. They want a high quality of life. And they want to be happy people around other happy people. And my question in Nebraska is, how can we represent the best of Midwestern values and ideas without letting one party have ownership of that? Thank
That's
you,
your
Mr.
time.
President.
Senator. Thank you, Senator Hunt. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President, colleagues. Thank you to the clerk. Yes, there was a motion before we got our new rules thing, so we got to do our thing with the motions and the thing and the guy at the place around the corner. Just kidding. So now it's a motion to recommit. So thank you to Senator Bostelman for coming over and talking with me through some of my own confusion over which amendment/bill we were on and getting clarification. I am a curious cat. I love to learn. And I once did the Gallup Strength Finders, and there's all different versions of it, but I did Gallup Strength Finders, and they say your strengths are also probably kind of your weaknesses as well, because it can kind of go in both directions. And so strategic was one of them, analytical, I think communication, but learner was definitely in my top 5. And I am definitely a learner. I love to learn things. I love to just like go down weird rabbit holes of information and not even know that that's what I was going to do until I'm doing it. I think my learner attribute had Senator Reapy on high alert when we were getting to the claims bill, because he didn't know what questions I might ask him. And frankly, I didn't know what questions I might ask him either, but I think we both let him off the hook on that one. So right now I am looking at, I went down this weird information of looking at Omaha waistline because it's the spring cleanup. So this is my PSA for anybody in Omaha. Spring cleanup is happening in April and May. It looks like April 22nd, April 29th, May 6th, May 13th, May 20th. I know this again from my local resource of all things that are a public good, Senator John Cavanaugh, constantly keeping me informed on public goods. I'm talking about the spring cleanup, Senator Cavanaugh. So Senator Cavanaugh had mentioned the spring cleanup over the weekend, and then my husband mentioned the spring cleanup, and then I was like, when is the spring cleanup? And I wanted to know, I need to figure out when the one is closest. Well, it doesn't have to be closest to me, but so that I can make sure that I get rid of whatever items I need to get rid of. And interestingly, you can do a yard waste one. So I should probably figure out that one, because I have yard waste that I have a compost, but the compost isn't like, you can't, it's not going to break down branches. So if you have big branches, you kind of want to have some place to put those. And the spring cleanup is the ones that collect yard waste. It's also great batteries. I save all my old batteries. Don't want to just throw those in the trash because then they leak into everything. So I keep all my batteries. And very oddly, now my son is going to be 5 this summer, but I keep my batteries in an old canister of formula. I don't know why. It just seems to work. I guess because it's got like a plastic lid on it. And I wrote in a Sharpie at some point in time, batteries, and it sits on a shelf in my garage. So you take those whether it's the spring cleanup, or you can take it to under the sink, which is in Omaha, where you can take your old paint cans and batteries and hazardous household waste like cleaning products, not hazardous waste, but look at the list under the sink, things you can take. Another valuable
1 minute.
resource. Thank you. I don't buy cleaning products so much anymore. I use vinegar for pretty much everything. I use it for salad dressing, which we can go back to talking about salads. I use vinegar for salad dressing, but I also use it to clean. I use it to clean my kitchen countertops. I use it to clean my floors. I just buy huge things of vinegar at Aldi or Costco, wherever. And I just use that to clean everything. And I got to tell you, it is fantastic. And sometimes if something's extra hard, what you do is you just put some baking soda down and then you spray it with a bottle of vinegar, and it's a fun science experiment in addition to cleaning. So yeah, that's the rabbit hole I was going down after talking with Senator Bosselman about the A bill and figuring out that I was on the wrong bill. Then I went down a rabbit hole of the waistline, thanks to Senator John Kavanaugh reminding me that it's spring cleanup.
That's your time,
Thank you,
Senator.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator John Kavanaugh, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just had a few more things to say about this, but I don't know if Senator Michaela Kavanaugh pointed out, the website is waistline.org, and it's the Omaha cleanup dates start April 22nd, April 29th, May 6th, May 13th, May 20th. And if you're interested in taking something, you basically just drive to one of the locations. You have to go to the website and see what the specific locations are. But they have some prohibited items, and then there are some items that you can only take to certain places, like if you have a big appliance that needs to go to a certain place, or tires, they think they take it certain places. So you need to look if you get some of those specific things. And then, of course, if you bring old bikes, they usually have somebody there that'll take the old bike and they'll either recycle them for scrap, or they'll take them to some place that refurbishes bikes, and they'll have scrappers there as well. So there's a lot of, it's a great event. I volunteered at my neighborhood association, has helped out at one of these usually in the Baxter Arena parking lot on 67th and Center. I don't know which date that one is at this point, but anyway, so it's a great program. You should take advantage of it. So today we talked about the library, the seed library, and the waistline cleanup day. So if you're in Omaha and you need either something for your garden, or you need to clean out your backyard to get your garden bed ready, now you know everything. But anyway, I had this little handout that somebody gave me from Monolith, which is a clean hydrogen company here in south of Lincoln. And the part that kind of jumped out at me as it pertains to the issue we're talking about here is we got the economic growth in Nebraska today and growing our facilities and impact. So they have economic growth in Nebraska today, $100 million from the construction of their facility, and 201 jobs, 93 direct and 108 indirect. And as they seek to expand, they're expanding to, so Monolith is proud to own and operate the world's largest commercially operating clean hydrogen and carbon black facility, which if you have the opportunity, I know that, I can't remember if it was Senator Decay or Senator Bosselman talked about carbon black, but Senator Mosier can really talk about carbon black. It was one of my favorite natural resource hearings where he explained to everybody what carbon black is and what it's used for. So he knows his stuff. But it's Olive Creek 1, located in Hallam, Nebraska. Construction will soon begin on the company's latest expansion, Olive Creek 2. The Olive Creek 2 facility will generate more than $1 billion in capital investment and create an additional 200 direct jobs. So this is the growing capacity. It'll be $100 billion plus, or I'm sorry, $1 billion plus for Olive Creek expansion, 758 Nebraska jobs, 222 direct, 536 indirect. Annual economic impact, $323 million. Labor income, $78.2 million. So this is a company that's located in Nebraska, and one of the reasons that we are, I think, uniquely situated to be one of these hydrogen hubs that is being funded by the Biden administration through the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. And if we are successful, we bring in another $1 billion in investment to perhaps expand Monolith, perhaps spin off some other businesses and industries surrounding that area. I think Hallam is in Senator Brandt's district. He's not here at the moment, but I'm sure he's around here somewhere and he could confirm or deny that, but that's my understanding. So it's not too far from Lincoln, but this is the economic impact from the current industry here. We have the potentiality to draw in, with this $250,000 investment, the opportunity to compete for that $1 billion, opportunity to build an industry for the future, a future-looking industry in the state of Nebraska. And I haven't even talked about that some of this can be used for fertilizer, which...
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. Obviously, there's a bigger conversation we had about maybe how we're applying fertilizer these days. But if we learned anything from the war in Ukraine and the trouble over there, that we need to be looking into more domestic production of fertilizers. So there's a lot of upside to getting the hydrogen hub built here, and there's a lot of opportunity going forward. And so that's why I've been supportive of the previous hydrogen hub bill, supportive of this hydrogen hub bill, and encourage your green vote on 1244. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Slama, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate Senator Hunt raising the comments about the Westboro Baptist Church, and I don't want to give anybody the line that nobody in the Republican Party has condemned the Westboro Baptist Church today. It's not been relevant to debate, so I'm more than happy to stand up here right now and say that the Republicans in this legislature, myself absolutely included, absolutely condemn the Westboro Baptist Church, their actions and how they operate. It is horrifying. It is terrible. It really brings out the worst you can see in the United States of America. So we absolutely wholeheartedly condemn them and their actions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Slama. Senator Hunt, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Senator Slama, thank you. I get your point totally about it not being relevant to debate. But thank you very much. Given that they're coming here on Thursday, and you know what you say about it bringing out the worst in our country, these people are brought out by bills like LB 574 and 575 that are anti-trans, that are hateful, that are brought into the spotlight where they don't belong. I mean, nobody would be surprised or shocked to see a conservative legislature in a red state like we have here in Nebraska introduce an abortion ban, introduce anti-trans stuff, introduce anti-LGBTQ stuff. This is all like, you know, what your party's about. And, but I guess what surprises me in Nebraska is just seeing them raised to the level of such a priority. And what you could say, you know, you're the one making a priority. You're the one who's making the whole session about this. And I guess that's a valid argument, but I just don't see it that way, because from day one, we set out from the very get-go that if a bill like LB 574 made it to the floor, if it made it out of committee, if it got a priority, if it was anything that was taken seriously, that would be a line in the sand, and that would be a non-starter for us in the legislature. And so I think we're playing the game that we all knew the rules to. Also, when that bill was first scheduled a couple weeks ago, and probably coming up again on Thursday when it's showtime for the Westboro Baptist Church, the bill was understood at the time to not have the votes to pass. And I don't know what kind of bargain or thing that a lot of people against the bill came around. Maybe it was one of those things where it's like, let's get it to select and see if we can fix it with an amendment. Let's get it to select and see what happens. Maybe it'll die on select, this and that. But we aren't bluffing. I'm not bluffing. I almost swore. I'm not kidding. I'm not messing with you. It's gone too far already. This anti-trans stuff does not benefit us politically. It doesn't benefit the GOP. It played really badly in Wisconsin this last week. And most people, Republicans for sure, in Nebraska don't care about this issue at all. The status quo is fine to them. And in Nebraska right now, the status quo is that we leave families alone. We trust them to make the right decision for them and their kids and their families. We have resources available to people. We have plenty of homophobia in this state. We have plenty of bigotry, and we don't really pass laws to increase that. We don't need to. We don't need to go that way. My question in Nebraska is, for real, how can we represent the best of Midwestern values and ideas without letting one party have ownership of that and without making it partisan at all? This is the story I was telling before lunch that got me into politics, this work I did with Omaha Public Schools on updating their human growth and development curriculum. It was so intoxicating and so exciting and cool because it felt like a progressive win against a lot of odds. But at the end of the day, nobody lost anything. Our rate of STDs and STIs in Douglas County went down. People have had such good outcomes because of this small change in policy that no one had to lose anything by passing. And
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. That to me is what is so intoxicating and cool about the potential of deliberative political bodies like the Nebraska Legislature. How can we get some wins on some things without there having to be a loser too? And with this issue, LB 574, 575, if these bills just die off, we don't have a loser because these bills aren't seeking to solve a problem that ever existed. It's inventing a problem based on fear, hate, and bigotry that's been risen to a level of, seriousness that's just not warranted by the people of Nebraska, in our state, in our country at all. And it's completely counter to the principles of freedom, self-determination, autonomy, the right to pursue happiness. So if we just kill these bills, nobody loses, actually. Senator Kauth can be embarrassed, but she probably already is.
That's your time, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you are recognized, and this is your third time.
Thank you, Mr. President. My middle kid was sending me text messages from their dad's phone, wondering if I watched the video of them playing soccer tonight. They had a soccer game. I actually haven't found out what the score was, but so I was just letting her know that, yes, I did see the video and that she was doing a great job. And then I had to send her a bunch of emojis because, she's 7 and emojis are a big thing. So I was trying to figure out what emojis to send to her. So, yeah. For me, every bill is about 574. Every time I'm up here talking, even though I try to stay as much as I can on topic with the bill at hand, I am up here talking because of 574. And I would not be talking on 565 if we didn't have 574 looming around the corner. So I get that people are tired of me talking about 574 when we're on a different bill, but that's because you view it differently than I do. I am here, I am standing at 7:51 p.m. on a Tuesday talking on a hydrogen hub bill because I oppose 574. I appreciate the comments about not supporting what the Westboro Church does. I think that's important for us as a body to acknowledge the inappropriateness of this church. I don't like saying church, but I guess church is in their name. So, but I am concerned. Why are they here on Thursday? How did they know before most of us knew that LB 574 was going to be debated on Thursday? It is not a coincidence. It is by design. And it is problematic because someone who had access to that information made that connection for them and told them. I did not have access to that information. I didn't know that 574 was even potentially on the agenda for this week until I arrived here today and people started talking about it. Which is a different level of upsetting that I wasn't told that it was going to be scheduled this week. We were told that 626 was going to be scheduled. We were told publicly that last week that 626 was going to be scheduled this week because it's such a significant and important bill for the right to life people, and it's scheduled on the Catholic lobbying day. So that's, again, not a coincidence. So everybody in the Catholic lobbying day could make sure that they showed up to show their support for LB 626, but we weren't told about LB 574, which takes away parental rights in healthcare. And we've had parents showing up here for weeks to talk to you all about that bill. And the fact that there wasn't an announcement made to inform the body and to inform the public that such a consequential legislation was going to be scheduled this week is upsetting. It is upsetting. And it's even more upsetting that not only was it scheduled this week and we weren't publicly told, but the Westboro Church was. That's problematic. You all have had parents and children coming here to the rotunda, asking to meet with you, many of you refusing to meet with your own constituents. But you know that they've been here. You know that they've been coming here to talk to you. They deserved a public announcement of that being scheduled. They deserved that. And the fact that it wasn't publicly announced, it still hasn't been publicly announced. This is pure speculation from Senator Hunt and myself. But nobody has gotten on the microphone and told us that we're wrong. It still hasn't been publicly announced. That is upsetting. That is hurtful to those families.
That's your time, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Hunt, you are recognized to speak, and this is your last opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. Good points raised by Senator Kavanaugh there. The LB 574 is one of the most consequential bills. We're going to pass two this year, probably. I'll pray to whatever God you want that we don't, but 574 to ban healthcare for trans kids, making us just like, you know, any backwoods state that you can find in the country, going the wrong way. And then the ban on abortion care, LB 626. These are the two most consequential bills for the erosion of healthcare rights of families, for the erosion of civil rights in Nebraska. And to have both of them coming up the same week is rough, but to not give notice to the parents, many of whom are already looking for new homes, already looking to move out of the state because of this bill. Yeah. If I was a supporter of that bill, I would be pretty embarrassed. And it ties to LB 565 because as I was coming down here from my meetings earlier in my office, I heard Senator DeKay and others talking about how the provisions of LB 565 and the amendments contained therein are going to be so good for the economy of this state. You guys will do literally anything for the economy of this state, quote unquote, our economy, then give people civil rights, then actually make this a place where people can have a high quality of life. You would trip over yourself and do anything to make the state more hospitable to business, hospitable to energy extraction from our planet, from our earth. But then when actual living, breathing people are out in the rotunda telling you how something is going to affect them, this is controversial, this we don't have the votes for, that doesn't make any sense to me. And it's unchristian, and it's an embarrassing misplacement of values. I get asked a lot when I do interviews or like speak to kids or something. One of the most common questions I get is, how do you get along with people who are so ideologically different from you? And I used to say, I mean, I used to have a lot of good answers that I really believed that you have to believe that everybody's doing their best with the information they have. I no longer think that because you guys have different information and either refuse to believe it or don't care and go against the facts and evidence anyway. Go against what experts say, go against what Nebraskans say, how things are going to affect them and have an outcome for them. So it's not that you're ignorant. You do know better. Or I used to say, you just have to find one thing about every person that you like and that you can, think about when you work with them so that you can look past what makes you so different. But this session has really radicalized me. This session has really made me see the fraud and the sham that this political system is when we are literally prioritizing pet insurance over letting actual human kids get health care. Like, are you serious? Are you serious? It is so fake and stupid. And that you all have a colleague, me, who LB 574 is going to affect personally.
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. You can't claim ignorance at all. You can't claim ignorance anymore and be like, well, I don't know. I didn't know this was a problem, blah, blah, blah. To say nothing of the anti-abortion bill. I thought this whole session was going to be about abortion. I thought the whole session was going to be about this body's efforts to cut down the rights of women as it's been chipping away at for the last 30 years. But it's all of that. It's bodily autonomy. It's the right to control our own reproductive destiny. It's the right to live as we are without interference from the state that you're so against. And it's because you hate us. It's because you hate us. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. Senator John Kavanaugh, you're recognized to speak. This is your last time on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. So again, in opposition to the motion to recommit, in favor of the underlying AM. And I just thought I'd read a little bit more from the Department of Energy's website about this particular program. Again, $7 billion to be spread out across the country, establishing 6 to 10 regional clean hydrogen hubs across America. And one of the kind of go on to talk about clean hydrogen hubs will create networks of hydrogen producers, consumers, local connective infrastructure to accelerate the use of hydrogen as a clean energy carrier that can deliver or store tremendous amounts of energy. The production, processing, delivery, storage, and end use of clean hydrogen, including innovative uses in the industrial sector, are crucial to DOE's, Department of Energy's, strategy for achieving President Biden's goal of a 100% clean electrical grid by 2035 and a net zero carbon emissions by 2050. So this is basically investing in this hydrogen hub is exciting for a number of reasons, but one of them is it's part of a broader approach to decarbonizing our electrical generation, which I know some people have been generally opposed to around here, but I think that's maybe because they didn't like the particular things that they thought were decarbonization. But there's a lot of folks who are interested in decarbonization for a number of reasons, and they want to take like an all of the above sort of approach, and this is part of that. Hydrogen energy has the power to slash emissions from multiple carbon-intensive sectors and open a world of economic opportunities to clean energy businesses and work across the country. Getting hydrogen right would mean unlocking the new source of clean, dispatchable power. So that goes back to our conversation about reliability earlier in this bill. There's one of the knocks on people that have problems with, say, solar and wind is they're non-dispatchable. What that means is you basically take the electricity they generate when they generate it, because when the sun's shining, solar is going to generate, and when the wind's blowing, wind turbines are going to generate, and they're not going to generate at other times. So you got to take it when it comes, right? But hydrogen has the potential to be a dispatchable source of power because, one, you can produce the hydrogen, you can burn it, and when you burn the hydrogen, in a potential turbine or in, say, a hydrogen fuel cell or something along those lines, you could ramp it up like you can with a natural gas plant or coal plant, or even nuclear, which is technically, I suppose, dispatchable, but not on a reasonable time scale. It takes a while to warm up and turn on and shut down a nuclear power plant. But again, I would suggest if you have the opportunity to tour our nuclear power plant we have here in the state of Nebraska, Cooper Nuclear, down in Senator Slama's district. I personally have toured it twice. And it's really interesting. They're very knowledgeable. They answer all your questions. They'll give you I think it was 6-hour tour. Your tour probably wouldn't be that long. I don't mean to dissuade you, but what I mean is they will take as much time as you are willing to answer all of your questions. Anyway, the bipartisan infrastructure law included several requirements for H2 hubs, including feedstock diversity and end-use diversity. So I think feedstock diversity would be, what is your fuel source, natural gas, or other electrolysis, I guess, through water is another option for hydrogen. And then end-use diversity, obviously a monolith plant's talking about producing hydrogen, carbon black, producing fertilizers. So I think the opportunity to produce a lot of different uses. Thank you, Mr. President. The program will develop H2 hubs that demonstrate the production, processing, delivery, storage, and end use of clean energy in support of the Biden administration's climate goals. H2 hubs will form the foundation of national clean hydrogen network that will contribute substantially to the decarbonizing multiple sectors of our economy and creating good paying jobs. So, now that I'm getting close to the end of my opportunity to talk on this part, at least, this is going to create jobs. We have the opportunity to get this federal money, bring in a large chunk of federal money, help build up an industry here. This industry has the opportunity to create jobs, to create innovative technologies, to create clean energy, sustainable, dispatchable, baseload power generation. Checks a lot of good boxes. And so that's why I've been excited about this concept, why I think we should continue to invest in it, and why we should be supportive of the opportunity for the state of Nebraska to qualify and to win one of these hydrogen hubs.
That's your time.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Seeing no one else in the queue, Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, you're recognized to close on your motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, it's starting to get dark in here, which is why these lights are very important. So motion to recommit. And then we have another amendment on this bill. Drop my paper. Oh, here we go. The next amendment is, what are we on? We're on 1244. So then we have 1241 before we go to a final vote under the underlying bill. And then we have the A bill. So, yeah. I don't know about you all, but I am mentally tired. So tired. I have been standing up here since like 9:13 this morning talking about, it's been a journey. Let me just tell you, it has been a journey. I didn't even remember how I got on the seed library earlier. Thank you to Senator Hunt for reminding me. Public good conversation. I was talking about waistline and my obsession with cleaning with vinegar. And I am a purist. I don't water down my vinegar when I clean with it, and I don't add lemons to it. So if you walk into my house and it smells like a salad, that's probably why, because I probably just cleaned my kitchen counters with vinegar. I got these spray bottles that are really nice from the dollar. It's not really a dollar, but the $1, $3, $5 area at Target. I don't know, like 2 years ago, and they're glass and they've got a nice little rubber bottom on them so they don't break, and miraculously my children haven't broken them. But I just refill them with vinegar and use the vinegar to spray down my countertops. And when there are stains, so my kitchen counter is Formica, and it's like white Formica with speckles in it, so it can absorb colored things pretty easily. And that's when you got to break out the baking soda and you put down, just like sprinkle a little layer of baking soda on the kitchen counter and then spray it with the vinegar. And then it's like when you make a volcano, it just starts to bubble and the kids think it's really funny. Not funny enough for them to actually help me clean, but you know, they're still entertained by the science experiment. Yes. I just remembered that I promised, I don't know that he views it as a promise, but I promised Senator Lowe I was going to talk about something about him. A couple hours back, Senator Wayne was talking about if you're on the canal and you're smoking weed and you're on the water, like the legality of it all. And I got to tell you, Senator Lowe, one of my favorite things that you ever said on the floor of this legislature was about cows eating weed and people getting high from eating a steak. This was like 4 years ago. And I did not know Senator Lowe at all at that point in time. And I have been a vegetarian for over 30 years. And I thought, maybe I should start eating steak. Is that where we're going with this, Senator Lowe? I need to hang out with you more often. Pretty sure that's not how it works. But I could be, again, I stand for correction. Maybe cows eating marijuana plant can translate into you getting high off of eating a steak. I feel like it would have to be at least
1 minute.
a steak tartare. It's not? Well, it seems like it's real science. But it was one of my absolute all-time favorite John Lowe speeches on the floor of the legislature. Probably a blip in your radar, but when Senator Wayne started talking about marijuana on the canal, Perkins Canal, it reminded me of that story. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm cool with the machine vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Members, the question is the motion to recommit. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
2 ayes, 32 nays, Mr. President, on the motion to recommit.
The motion fails. Seeing no one in the queue, Senator Bostelman, you're recognized to close on AM 1244.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for a green vote, AM 1244 to LB 565. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The question is the adoption of AM 1244. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
35 ayes, no nays, Mr. President, on adoption of the amendment.
AM 1244 is adopted.
No, sir, one more division.
Mr. Clerk, for a division.
Mr. President, the fourth and I believe final division will be AM 1241, which I understand is comprised of Legislative Bill 568.
Senator Bostelman, you're recognized to open on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. AM 1241 includes provisions of LB 568. The bill would establish a Nuclear and Hydrogen Development Act, which directs the Department of Economic Development to establish a work group whose members would be appointed by the governor. The work group will identify workforce needs of the nuclear and hydrogen industries and collaboratively recommend educational programming to train and develop a workforce critical to our nation's growing energy needs. The work group will consist of 12 members. The makeup of the working group includes one representative from the community colleges, one from the state college system, 2 of the representatives of the nuclear industry, 2 representatives of the hydrogen industry, 1 representative of public power district, and 2 at-large members. The director of economic development or designee, the chairperson of the natural resource committee or designee, the chairperson of the government, military, and veterans affairs committee or designee. LB 568 also appropriates $200,000 of general funds, which the work group may utilize for travel and lodging reimbursements, as well as per diem for when the working group is engaged in business. Both the hydrogen and nuclear industries are rapidly expanding and advancing. Monolith Industries in Hallam is set to expand its facilities with its Olive Creek 2 plant, and NPPD is currently conducting a feasibility study for potential siting of advanced nuclear technology. This act is targeted to address the needs of both industries by training, building, and supporting a highly skilled workforce. This workforce will not only address the needs of both industries, but also provides programming to establish a skilled workforce that will support many other industries statewide, such as information technology, welders, pipe fitters, electricians, and many, many others. With the new advancements in these industries, it is vital that we develop a skilled workforce that can meet the industry's needs. The working group will spearhead a dynamic and collaborative process, bringing industry and education together to recommend the needed coursework and opportunities for Nebraskans, making Nebraska a leader in this type of programming. The committee voted to include LB 568 in the committee amendment with an 8-0 vote. I would ask for a green vote on AM 1241 and the underlying bill LB 565. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Clerk, for items.
Mr. President, I've got 2 amendments here, AM 1227 and AM 1228, both from Senator Hunt, with notes that she wishes to withdraw.
Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you're recognized to speak.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. AM 1241 is LB 568. I just tried to get ahead of myself the last time. Hold on. Okay. I tried to get ahead of myself the last time when I was like looking at the A bill, reading through it, asking Senator Bosselman questions, and he's like, you are talking about the next amendment. So LB 568 is this amendment, and that's why I was getting confused about the hydrogen development fund. And then the amendment changes how much money is in the appropriations. So I was looking at the A bill 568, and that A bill is no longer the A bill for the amendment, because when we amend the one bill into another bill, we sometimes make changes, which happened in this instance. So AM 1241 is 568. So I'm going to look at what it says in the committee statement, because the committee statement will be the synopsis of 568, but it will tell us what it actually is as opposed to the underlying 568. It's the amended version of 568 into 565. Follow clearly, easy peasy, lots of numbers just jumbled around. Also, if I were to call into that one of my favorite shows on NPR, Way with Words, I would ask about the saying easy peasy. Like, where does that come from? Regionally, easy peasy lemon squeezy is what my kids always say. What does that even mean? Right? I don't know. Okay, so 568, here we go. 568, introduced by Senator Bosselman, creates the Nuclear and Hydrogen Development Act to support workforce development and advancement of advanced nuclear and hydrogen industries in Nebraska. Creates a work group to evaluate and make recommendations regarding the workforce training needs of the nuclear and hydrogen industries in Nebraska, and provide an opportunity for collaboration of the industries and higher education in the state to provide grants, training, curriculum, programming, and marketing to meet the workforce needs of the industry as identified by the work group. Non-legislative members of the work group can get paid $60 per diem a day when performing work group functions and may be reimbursed for travel and lodging. The fund terminates on July 31st, 2028. AM 849 slightly changes board composition, reduces funding ask from $5 million to $200,000. That's a big reduction. And only allows use of funds for per diem and reimbursement of non-legislative group members for travel and lodging. So I previously talked about legislative per diems and reimbursements, and when we're not in session and you're doing work group or special committee travel outside of not coming to the Capitol, we do get per diems we don't get per diems. Sorry. We do get mileage reimbursements. You do not get a per diem for travel for special committees. And you don't get mileage actually either unless it comes to the Capitol or if the executive board approves that, which we have had in the past. The Youth Rehabilitation Treatment Center Oversight Committee had such reimbursement when we had to travel and stay overnight somewhere. Did we stay overnight somewhere? Maybe I'm just dreaming that. I feel like we went to Kearney and stayed over. We did stay overnight because I remember having dinner with Senator Lowe in Kearney. I did not have the steak. And Senator Hansen was there. I do remember that because he was hungry. What was the restaurant we went to? It was lovely. Well, anyways, it had a buffet. I remember that. It was a lovely restaurant and a great time in Kearney. So thank you for showing us the town, Senator Lowe, even if you didn't get me a steak with marijuana, but next time. There's always next time. I think you said I had 1 minute, so I'm probably just about done. Thank you.
Senator John Kavanaugh, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I appreciate, again, Senator Bosselman. This bill, his introduction was pretty instructive and helpful, but this is another bill that's kind of forward-looking. And at the hearing, I was just looking at the committee statement and we're recalling who came and testified. And I would just note that it was several members of the community college. Let's see, here we go. Southeast Community College, Monolith, Day and Zimmerman, who I think are consultants for nuclear industry, and the Power Association and the Power District of Nebraska. So these are all folks who looking to fill jobs, looking to train people in these jobs, looking to, as Senator Bosselman pointed out, not just jobs that might be at Monolith and that might be at the hydrogen hub, that might be at Cooper Nuclear, but other jobs in growing industries. And when we're talking about bringing businesses to the state of Nebraska, one of the things that you'll hear from people is, can we hire the workforce who's going to be skilled to do this? And should we invest in training the workforce, or is it more cost effective for us to move to a place that doesn't have a workforce and train it? Or would it be better to move to a place where we can hire some people who are already in the pipeline or hire them away from somebody? So creating a critical mass of a workforce. And so that's another part of this whole broader opportunity here, is to create these programs that are get people trained in these fields, which then will help us grow and build a virtuous cycle off of all of this opportunity and move forward. So I'm in support of 1241, but I wanted to make sure I had the time. So I have a book here that's about idioms, which is sayings, and I was looking through it. I don't have easy peasy in here, but there is several different idioms that I was looking through, and there's pie in the sky is a pretty good one. It's fantasy and unachievable dream. In the context, he was talking about setting up his own business. His plans were pie in the sky. So pie in the sky is of American origin and was coined by Joe Hill in 1911. Hill was an instrumental member of the radical labor organization of the Industrial Workers of the World, known as the Wobblies. He wrote a number of songs for the Wobblies, including The Preacher and the Slave, which parodied the Salvation Army's hymn In the Sweet By and By. Hillsong criticizes Salvation Army's philosophy, in particular, their desire to save souls rather than feed the hungry. The lines in Hill's parody, "You will eat by and by in the glorious land in the sky, work and pray, live on hay, you'll get pie in the sky when you die." So that's the origin of the phrase, pie in the sky. So I don't think Senator Michaela Cavanaugh was listening, but maybe we'll give her another lesson on idioms later. Thank you, Mr. President. Totally.
Senator Hunt, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. So yeah, I wanted to finish this thought. People have asked me how I get along with folks who, well, they didn't even say who you don't get along with. That's not ever even the question. The question is, how do you get along and be collegial with people who want to take your rights away? That's direct quote, a question I've gotten dozens and dozens of times. And I mean, I don't know, maybe everybody has to come to that point at some time, at some point in their work for justice. I don't know, but I'm really at that point. I admire so much people like Senator Michaela Cavanaugh or Senator John Kavanaugh, or I heard him go, yes, Senator Danielle Conrad, who are able to stay in relationship with people who want to take their rights away. And I just don't want to. Like, I just really don't care anymore. You guys are so rude. You're so rude. And you think I'm rude. All the stuff I've said about Kathleen Kauth and stuff like that, Senator Kauth. She wrought this upon all of us. And I don't care about being rude to people who want to take my rights away. I think that we've done too much of that in this country, actually. And I think that it's time to draw a line that's a little bit brighter and say, literally, you've done too much. You've burned the bridge. It's not reparable. It's not normal what you're doing. This Republican slide to the far right, one of you's got to put a stake in the ground and say enough. And Senator Slama got up and talked about, condemning the Westboro Baptist Church, which is great, but why are they even coming here? Why are the thank God for dead cops, thank God for dead veterans, God hates fags people coming to this legislature? Because of Senator Kathleen Kauth, and because it was prioritized, and because one of you couldn't be bold and brave enough to vote against a bill that you don't even support in the first place. Imagine if somebody stood up and condemned what happened in Tennessee. The way those 3 members of the Tennessee legislature were, I don't know what the name of the motion is in their legislature, but they took a vote to kick them out. And the 2 young black men were kicked out, and the older white woman stayed in by 1 vote. It's like they're just out in the open with the racism. They're not even hiding it. It's like, we knew you were that way, but you're not even hiding it. We knew you hated gay people and trans kids and drag queens, etc., but now you're not even hiding it. It used to be collegial and polite to at least hide it. That would be Nebraska nice to talk crap in the background behind their back, but not introduce a whole bill just banning it. Insane. And it's really got me in a different place. Imagine if LB 574 failed. Imagine if somebody decided today, it's never the wrong time to do the right thing, that enough is enough, let's put it up Thursday, it'll fail. We're not going to get to that amendment, first of all, and it's going to fail. What if we just got that over with? And then I will take apologies, because, if you vote no on that bill, we're not automatically cool again. Because you've put people in this state through a lot. You've put the LGBTQ community in Nebraska through a lot, and not just the people who are gay or trans, but their families, their loved ones and friends, their bosses and coworkers, the people who are looking for new states to move to and a new place to live because of the threat that this legislature has put them under. But all this could go away like tonight. And this is why I just can't take you seriously. This is why when you stand up on LB 565 and you say, I don't know what this is, hydrogen hub, I don't know. Every bill's got 40 bills in it now. Oh, it's so good for the state, good for bottom line. We're going to have carbon black and
Yeah. It is getting late. It is 8:28 and it is late. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. If anybody has a connection with A Way with Words, I would love to know the history of that phrase because my kids say it all the time and it's just a fun. Does Senator John Kavanaugh know the answer? Would you like me to ask you to yield to a question? Would Senator John Kavanaugh yield to a question?
Senator John Kavanaugh, will you yield?
Yes.
Did you want to share with the class what easy peasy lemon squeezy comes from?
Well, on my last time on the mic, I read from this book of idioms.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's why you're upset.
I didn't read Easy Peasy Lemon Squeezy.
Okay. Well, then, is it in there?
It is not in here, but
Okay.
Senator Dungan did a little research and found out the answer. To the
Oh, well then, thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Would Senator Dungan yield to a question?
Senator Dungan, will you yield?
Yes.
Senator Dungan, did you find the origins of easy peasy lemon squeezy?
My very brief research is not definitive, but I believe there was a product in the 50s or 60s called like lemon squeezy or squeezy lemon or something to that effect. In the UK, it was a soap.
Oh.
And so although they cannot directly tie it back to a particular ad campaign, it is more likely than not that it derives from that in some capacity.
Did they say easy peasy in that ad campaign?
I don't know.
Or they definitely said lemon squeezy.
Correct. Yeah, lemon squeezy was a product. And so
Lemon
the easy
squeezy.
peasy and the lemon squeezy being combined were most likely part of some connection there.
Okay.
That's my very brief Googling that I did.
Okay, so we still need A Way with Words to research this for us.
Correct.
Are you familiar with the show?
I am.
I love that show. And they do a deep dive. So thank you, Senator Dungan. And thank you, Senator John Kavanaugh. I apologize. I missed the reading of the idioms previously. Yeah, easy peasy lemon squeezy. We will persevere on that and find the answer to its origins at some point in the next 30 days, I'm sure. So LB 565 AM 1241 is the divided question. I believe it's the last piece of the divided question of LB 565. And then it'll probably get adopted and move on. And then we'll do the A bill, easy peasy lemon squeezy. I do hope that that's not offensive. Sometimes, you know, you have to, like, you say things that were just sayings that you were used to saying most of your life. And then it's like, wait a second. And I remember, I don't know, well, Senator Ben Hansen was here. And I said, not Senator Ben Hansen, Senator Ben Hansen is still here. Senator Matt Hansen was here. And I said on the mic, gobbledygook. And I instantly was like, what does that mean? Is that a bad thing to say? And he had the same thought and he looked it up and he said, no, it means like gobbledygook, like nonsense. So that one's cool. Yes, Senator Ben Hansen, I already talked about you and dinner in Kearney with Senator Lowe. You might have heard it. You might have missed it. It's just a fond memory of
1 minute.
good times in Kearney. Thank you, Mr. President. So idioms. I'm looking forward to Senator John Kavanaugh's book of idioms. Going to have to borrow that. I love a good idiom. Oh, it's not your book, or you're not going to share it? He'll share it. He's a good sharer. He's also a good brother, even though he votes against my stuff sometimes. Again, awkward drive home tonight, where we are going to have a conversation about our votes and whether or not we vote against each other. But I think somebody asked me if I would record the conversation about our conversation about you voting against me today. But I won't do that to you. I'll just talk about it publicly instead. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator John Kavanaugh, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's always a joy. I wanted to go back to the underlying bill, and I had a couple of points that I wanted to make about it. First off, just to revisit the fact, so this partly creates the hydrogen industry working group that includes 12 members, community colleges, state colleges, nuclear industry, hydrogen industry, public power district, 2 at-large members, economic development, or designee, chairperson natural resources, chairperson of government, military, veterans affairs, but I would just point out that doesn't list our state universities that have engineering schools. That was pointed out to me by someone, and I just would hope that we have the opportunity with those at-large spots at least to include our university system as well, who has great capacity and has demonstrated ability to contribute in these sorts of spaces going forward. And so I just wanted to make sure and point that out. But as I was sitting here reading my book of idioms, I stumbled on the one, and I've actually been thinking about this one a lot. It's the phrase Pyrrhic victory. And it was kind of, Senator Hunt made me think of that one in the last statement, that does feel like sometimes we're having these conversations about, like, I'm in favor of this because I do think it is good for the economic future of the state of Nebraska. But we can make certain advances. So, I should go back. Pyrrhic victory comes from, I didn't actually read the definition here, but if I remember right, from the time of the Greeks when there was a war and the Pyrrhics, I guess, or the Battle of Pyrrhic, the one side won, and the result was said, if we win any more battles like this, we'll lose this war, because basically, like, it's the idea of you win the battle, you lose the war, and that's what it feels like with some of this around here. It's like we can put all the effort in the world, we can do lower taxes, we can incentivize businesses to come here, we can do all these things, but if you create a hostile environment that nobody wants to live in, of course, that there's not really a point to doing that. If young people run from the state because they don't want to live in a state like this, what was the point of winning the victory of getting the hydrogen hub and bringing this technology and these jobs here and you set up a system to train young people in these fields? You have to have both of these things. You have to be a welcoming place that people want to live. So we can invest in these sort of economic development things, and we can tell ourselves that's the thing that checks the box for people. But ultimately, people are going to want to live where they feel welcome. They want to live where they fit in. They want to live where there's opportunities for them, both personally, socially, emotionally, to grow in their life and to have a happy life. People aren't just going to move somewhere just because it has the most favorable tax climate necessarily. So that's why those things kind of struck me at the same time, is that I'm in favor of these things, for all of the reasons I've talked about over the course of the day, but we do a disservice to each of these projects and to all of the other economic development projects we're talking about here when we talk about all of these other exclusionary things like 574 or 626 or I'm not really good at remembering other bill numbers, but those are the two that come to mind immediately because people talk about them so much. But when we talk about doing those sorts of things that are going to drive away particularly.
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. Drive away particularly the young professional type people that we're talking about fostering in both this section and, well, in 565 generally, but in the last two portions of this section. So when, going back to the beginning of the day, what's relevant to the conversation? And all of these things are relevant to each other because our ultimate objective is to make Nebraska a better place and a place that people want to live, people are going to come to, people want to stay, people want to grow their lives and their families, want to build businesses, and all of those things tie together. So I continue to support AM 1241 and will oppose some of those other bills when they do come up to the floor. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Hunt, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator John Kavanaugh, you totally get it. That's my point. We quibble over, $1 million for this and $1 million for that. To create a bunch of jobs for a big corp. I mean, I sound like ad busters. I sound like a 15-year-old who just discovered punk or something. But who cares if there are jobs? No one wants to live here. No one wants to live here. We can't attract and retain talent. We had guys from Union Pacific, from the state chamber, from the Omaha chamber, from Signature Performance, from, I think there was another guy from Union Pacific. All these old white men coming in here for the hearing on my bill to stop LGBTQ workplace discrimination. One of the most spectacular stories in modern American political history is the story of how public opinion on LGBTQ issues has changed over the past few decades. And with the legalization of same-sex marriage, when Barack Obama ran for president, he didn't even support same-sex marriage. We had to say civil unions because it was too edgy and leftist to say same-sex marriage. And now look at where we are. It's fine. It's fine. Even Republicans in the U.S. Senate are not in favor of getting rid of the right to gay marriage because public opinion has shifted so much. So we've got all these old white businessmen from Nebraska coming to Megan's hearing about workplace equality saying, here are some literal stories, some actual anecdotes that happened to me and my business of people turning down jobs because they said, yikes, I don't want to live in Nebraska. Y'all are getting an abortion ban. This literally happened. Not once, like dozens and dozens of times. And I've also heard from department chairs at University of Nebraska Lincoln and University of Nebraska Omaha who have said the same thing. They're trying to recruit faculty. Some departments have 3, 4, 5+ faculty openings that have been sitting vacant for over a year. People go get a PhD, they want to become a professor. And we've got more jobs for professors in Nebraska than we've got professors, not because we are investing so much in education, but because we can't get qualified people to move to our state because they don't want to live somewhere with LGBTQ discrimination and with an abortion ban. This afternoon, I had the most novel experience for me. I had lunch with the governor by myself. It was me and him and his staff, but I'd never, none of y'all were there. And, Governor Ricketts never did that with me. He only met with me one time in 4 years, and it was to tell me no. It was to basically slap me down and give me a hard no on food assistance for people with drug convictions. And it was a pretty unpleasant meeting. And Governor Pillen and I today over lunch, first the lunch was great. The lunch was really good. And I'm such a picky eater and I hate eating lunch with people. It's like my biggest anxiety. I hate it. And we had a really nice lunch. The food was great. The conversation was nice. We talked mostly about our pets, which is like the universal thing that people who politically disagree are allowed to talk about. You can talk about your kids. Well, I can't talk about my kid anymore because my kid is trans. So I literally will not talk to you about my kid because I want to hear some hateful crap coming out of you. So we didn't talk about my kid.
1 minute.
But we talked about our pets. Thank you, Mr. President. We talked about being business owners. I'm anything like Jim Pillen, but It was lovely. And he wanted to talk about his school funding plan. And I joked that I'm obviously the key vote or something, like, why am I here? Literally, why am I here? You don't need my vote. The bill has the votes to pass. You don't need anybody's vote. We're good. But just, that he reached out and wanted to talk to me and make a connection, like, that's nice, right? That was pretty nice. But the whole time I'm just thinking, you think we're going to fix this state and fix the problems recruiting teachers, fix the problems of underfunding for our rural schools with this bill when people just straight up don't want to live here? The call is coming from inside the House. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you're recognized to speak. This is your last time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is possibly my last time speaking tonight. So it's been fun. It's been a fun day. It's been a long day. It's been an interesting day. We moved some things forward from general file, which is good. It was really fun when we started moving bills and the bell would just ding and everybody machine voted, and you do the hustle where you come running down and you like kind of skirting your way through the rows trying to get to your button to do it before the president calls for the vote to be recorded. You want to get your vote recorded. And I didn't see anybody, myself included, but sometimes it's fun. We'll see somebody like running in, raising their hand, basically being like, don't call the vote, don't call the vote. I got to get over there. And every time it dings, it's like everybody just comes from, like, swoops in, whoosh, like from the cloakroom, that hallway, out there, everybody's sitting under the balconies, and it's just like a swoop in, whoosh. And it was fun. It was fun to have sort of the normal old groove of how we would just move bills. I would love to have that for the rest of session. I really would. I would love to have that. I enjoy talking to colleagues about stuff. I've had a great time on this bill, which I never probably would have paid this close of attention to if I weren't taking so much time. But I've really enjoyed and appreciated Senator Bosselman talking to me about this bill on the microphone, off the microphone. I've probably learned more about hydrogen hubs that I will also forget eventually, because there is only so much capacity at this point in time in my brain. But it was a long day. It was a tiring day. I'm hoping that the day is concluding soon. If it's not, I'll get back in the queue and do the dance all over again. But it was nice to see some progress. And I'd like to see more progress. And unfortunately, as long as 574 exists, that we're not going to continue seeing progress like that. And I would really like to see more progress like that. And I'd really like to talk a lot less. I've got a million things to talk about constantly. I will come up with a million more things to talk about. But I don't think any of you care to hear any more from me. I don't really care to talk anymore. I will. But it'd be really great if when 574 comes up supposedly on Thursday, if it doesn't have the votes, then I get out of your hair. It's that simple. So looking forward to wrapping things up on general file on 565. And again, I appreciate Senator Bosselman for educating me on this issue. It's been interesting. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Cavanaugh. Senator Hunt, you're recognized to speak. This is your final time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I got this email to my legislative account since the very last time I just spoke. And the person says, "Good evening. I know I cannot be the only person to thank you, but listening to you tonight made me reach out too. All the time, I think you are seeing exactly what is in my mind or what I'm trying to tell people. I'm a single mom of a teenage daughter who is trans. She's brilliant and refusing to consider going to college here because of LB 574 and 575. I do not blame her. We have been reaching out to friends and family in other states in case we have to leave. I have a career here that I have been building for a long time, but my daughter's health isn't worth staying. Not being able to continue hormone replacement therapy is not an option. Like you, I didn't mourn when she started transitioning. I am in awe all the time of just how more her she is. More confident, more social, more comfortable in her skin, more engaged in school and community. She's the person she was meant to be. I understand you being over it and feeling the need to cut ties. I need you to know that you are exactly the voice trans parents need right now, and everything you are saying is spot on. It goes on. It's really nice. I say that to continue to make the point that whether we're talking about executives at Union Pacific or this mom who just emailed me 2 minutes ago after hearing me speak, Nebraskans don't want to ban healthcare for trans people, and Nebraskans do not want an abortion ban. Senator Reapy was passing out an article to his Republican colleagues earlier today from Wall Street Journal on April 6th titled "The GOP's Abortion Flop." And it's talking about, it's written from a conservative voice. I mean, the author is clearly a Republican, a conservative, and he's talking about how this abortion ban is such a losing issue for states. People are not tolerating this anymore. And it's becoming an anchor that's weighing you guys down, and you're gonna fall off the edge of the boat with this thing tied to your leg. They say the US Senate, a half dozen governor's mansions, 4 state legislative chambers, and now control of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. At some point, the GOP might want to acknowledge its glaring abortion problem and do something about it. Colleagues, without the backstop of Roe versus Wade, I remember talking to a conservative colleague who is still here last year when we were talking about the total abortion ban that was proposed by Senator Albright, which she still stands by and said she would like to introduce again. That's the bill she likes. The one that banned IVF, the one that banned long-term contraception, the one that banned IUDs. And my colleague said, well, I support it because we have Roe versus Wade. And like, you guys are using that as an excuse to tell yourselves, well, it's okay if we ban abortion in Nebraska because they can still go to somewhere else and get the care. You're admitting in saying that people need abortion care. And you don't care if they don't get it in Nebraska, but as long as we have Roe versus Wade, they can go somewhere else and get it if they need it. Well, we no longer live in that reality. We don't have that backstop. And that's why this is such a losing issue for you. And thinking people around the state who are conservative, who are Republicans, they're asking us to come off this because it doesn't matter to them. You don't have to subvert, thank you, Mr. President, you don't have to subvert your values and your beliefs to just leave people alone and stop seeing your role in the legislature as a mandate to push these conservative culture war issues on a population that just isn't asking for it. Like, make me shut up. Make me stop this. I have a price. It's very low. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. There being no one in the queue, Senator Bostelman, you're recognized to close on AM 1241 and waives closing. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 1241. All those in favor, vote aye. All those opposed, vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
36 ayes, no nays on the adoption of the amendment.
The amendment is adopted. There being no one in the queue, Senator Bostelman, you're recognized to close. Excuse me. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator Michaela Cavanaugh would offer MO 937 to indefinitely postpone Legislative Bill 565.
Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you're recognized to open on that bill.
I withdraw the motion. Thank you.
It is withdrawn. Senator Bostelman, you're recognized to close on LB 565.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you all for the time that we spent on this bill today on the amendments. I do appreciate your green vote on LB 565. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Bostelman. The question is to advance LB 565 to ENR initial. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
35 ayes, no nays, Mr. President, on advancement of the bill.
It is advanced. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, next bill, Legislative Bill 565A, introduced by Senator Bostelman. It's a bill for enacting new appropriations, appropriates funds to aid in the carrying out of the provisions of Legislative Bill 565. Bill's read for the first time on April 5th of this year and reported straight to general file.
Senator Bostelman, you're recognized to open on the bill. Thank you, Mr. President. This is the A bill to LB 565. Basically, there's two parts to this: $250,000 for FY 23-24 and $250,000 for FY 24-25 for the hydrogen hub application engineering consultants and modeling of 565. The other portion of this is $200,000 for travel and lodging reimbursements and per diem for the hydrogen work group in FY 23-24. It's LB 568. I'd ask for your green vote on LB 565A. Thank you.
There being no one else in the queue, you're recognized to close and waive closing. The question is the advancement of LB 565A to ENR initial. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
34 ayes, no nays, Mr. President, on advancement of the bill.
The bill does advance. Mr. Clerk, for items.
Mr. President, a single name add, Senator Boston, name added to LB 626. Priority motion, Senator Rabel would move to adjourn the body until Wednesday, April 12, 2023 at 9:00 a.m.
Mr. Speaker, for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Given the continued discussion of LB 574 on multiple bills over many days, I have decided to schedule the select file debate of LB 574 for Thursday morning. We're at the very same place we were prior to the general file debate of LB 574. Every day, every bill is a debate of LB 574. I think it's time to actually debate the bill. I did not make an announcement on Friday that LB 574 would be scheduled on Thursday because I had not made that decision on Friday. Also, contrary to some comments made earlier today, it is a coincidence that I'm scheduling LB 574 for select file debate the same morning as a demonstration in support of the bill. I made my decision to schedule the select file debate of this bill when it was obvious this morning that until we complete debate of it, one way or another, some members intend to continue to make the debate of every bill about LB 574. I do not intend to let an outside group, whether a group is for or against legislation, to influence when I schedule bills for debate. Quite honestly, the Westboro Church could have known LB 574 would be talked about on Thursday, even if I had not decided this morning to schedule the bill for that day, because LB 574 has been talked about every day. Additionally, on Thursday, we will take up the select file debate of 753, the bill to adopt the Opportunity Scholarships Act. Also, a reminder that we will begin tomorrow morning with the general file debate of LB 626, the bill to adopt the Nebraska Heartbeat Act. Cloture on that bill will be around 7 p.m. After that bill, we will pick up with LB 254 from today's agenda. Tomorrow is a late night until at least 9 p.m. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The motion is to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, nay. We are adjourned.